Hello. Thanks, Jane. Thanks to everybody at the Export Exchange for having me. It's an honor to be here. I'm looking forward to meeting all of you and learning about what you're doing. This seems like a really nice sense of community and an opportunity for everybody to sort of not only learn something, but teach something, which is what I kind of felt out there in the auditorium. So I'm excited, and I'm excited to hear everybody else speak today. So this comes at an interesting time in our history at Pitchfork to be talking to you all. It's our 20-year anniversary. We were one of the first online blogs, not only music websites, but blogs in general. And it's also interesting because we have been independent for most of those 20 years up until this past October when we were acquired by Condé Nast, which has been a really great thing for us. I guess, you know, as a company that has worked to provide voices to independent artists who don't necessarily have voices for that long, we've also been operating with an independent spirit the entire time. And so in 2016, as you're all aware, it's difficult to be in publishing, it's difficult to be in media. There's a lot of changes that might compromise your voice. And so to be independent is a much more nuanced proposition than to be with, you know, whatever your organization is. Independence means, to me, your spirit rather than how you're organized. And so for us, the Condé Nast acquisition has been a wonderful thing because we're able to keep our independent voice. When we were operating with just our own resources, we were starting to worry that we'd have to compromise that and able to keep things moving. And so they're a company that has 120 years of experience with editorial excellence and letting people's voices be heard. So this is an interesting time for us. But before I speak any more on that, I guess I should talk about what Pitchfork is for those of you who don't know. In short, we like to say that we're music's most trusted voice. There are a few reasons for that, and I can get into that now. One of them is the historical precedent. Again, we've been around for 20 years. So in that, you know, it's taken time to build trust, and if you want to develop trust from an audience, time is a really nice ingredient to have in that mix. So we've had that advantage to have a long period of time to work and have people sort of understand what we do and sort of earn that trust. But also, we have the, the advantage of all of that archived content. You know, to have a website for 20 years at this point, we still have features that perform really, really well from 10 years ago. And so for us, that's a huge advantage that we do have that backlog of information and data and content. Another reason we like to establish trust, and we hope that we've earned it, is that we focus on these emerging sounds and that we aim to sort of bring progressive artists and music to the forefront and give it a louder voice and take something that was independent and something that was maybe more difficult to sort of for artists to get out there. A lot of artists that we've worked with, including Montreal's own Arcade Fire, has grown alongside Pitchfork in some ways. So that kind of trust has happened again over time with people discovering music on Pitchfork and then later on seeing it sort of blossom over and over. We also have this understood aesthetic. It sort of lives alongside that trust, but when you have developed this relationship with an audience over time, there is this sort of understood nuance that you know, almost like a friend that you can disagree with from time to time. You know, somebody that you like to challenge and somebody that you like to engage with because you know where they're coming from and what their taste is, and you can sort of debate with them any type of culture. And for us, it's music, and that established aesthetic is helpful for us to make that trust. And we have an authoritative voice because of that. We can oftentimes be the last word on sort of music. So if you are looking for not only discovering new music, but reading about it and trying to decipher something that maybe is a little bit out of your comfort zone in terms of your own musical tastes, we've developed a relationship with our audience to have that sort of authoritative voice. Also an important thing, and I'll bring this up again and talk about it a little bit more, but we're a filter for criticism. We're a filter for discovery, not an aggregator. In our world, as music journalists, there are many more ways to discover music now than there were 20 years ago when we started. Most people today discover music through social media or streaming platforms like Apple Music and Spotify and Pandora, and which is great. We like to work alongside those things. But it really, truly is the main method of discovery now, whereas when Pitchfork started 20 years ago, it was music criticism, it was journalism, it was reading reviews in a magazine about new albums that were coming out. And today it's quite a bit different. So for us, we use that to our advantage. We like to be a voice that people can, again, trust and go to, and it's a filter based on multiple humans who are trying to share the same voice versus an aggregate, versus a computer saying, all right, you like this band, so maybe you like this band, which again, I use that method of discovering music myself, and we like to work alongside it. But we hope that we can provide value to the music community and music listeners through that authoritative voice versus through the technological aspect of aggregation. Also, we know when to quit. When things get to a certain point, we know to stop doing what we're doing.
We're catnapped. I'm Gil.
I'm Meryl. That's Kevin.
I'm Gunn. That's Kathy.
5, 6, 7, 8.
This reviewer couldn't discern exactly what was happening that night. He just knows it transcends music on literally every single level.
Hey, you guys. This band, Catnapped, everything that can be said in music has now been said. I think we're done. We can shut the site down. We did it. Good job, everybody. Shut down your computer, shut down the site.
Inside joke that we have, well, I guess it's not an inside joke, but a joke that we have around the office to shut down your computers every time something amazing happens. But it is kind of a funny thing in that, like, any kind of truth in that sketch from Portlandia is just that everybody that works for Pitchfork really does still love music. And it really is about having our hearts in discovering new music and being excited by things that are happening in music and having it be a part of our lives. And that's the type of audience that we have. So it's something that it's really the main thing that drives us is our love for music. We've been lucky to win a few awards in the last few years. We were just nominated for a National Magazine Award for design and also for a video series we have called Over Under, which the winners will be announced on Monday. And we've won some other design awards through the AIGA, the Corporate Leadership Award, and the Society of Publication Design awarded us Brand of the Year last year. And we also won a Webby Award for the Best Music Website this past year. So journalism is obviously at the forefront of our attention, but progressive design and our product is really important to us, and how we communicate these things is also just a huge focus for us, and where we put a lot of our attention. Before I really get into some of the more nuances of what we do, our audience is really kind of the most important thing, I think, to talk about in that sense. The people that care about what we do and that we like to speak to. This is basically who they seem to be, according to Google Analytics and Quantcast and different measures of that nature. 73% are college educated or higher, 90% are over the age of 21, 73% are between the ages of 21 and 39, and it's about 63% male, 37% female. Those numbers obviously change quite a bit. They go back and forth and fluctuate over time. And the reason I say who they seem to be is not only because that kind of data can fluctuate a little bit, but it's also not necessarily what we pay attention to. We definitely want to be focused on having a diverse audience and speaking to a diverse group of people, but our intention isn't to speak to one specific kind of person unless they're a music lover. the type of person who just can't live without it. It's a part of their lives. They think about it every day. They listen to it every day. Not only are they discovering new music every day, but they're listening to music that means a lot to them, that's nostalgic for them. To that end, it's part of their identity. These are people who classify themselves not only as music lovers, but maybe the friends they've made have been a part of, a social group that the first thing they had in common with them was whatever type of genre they're into, or their favorite artists were, or what kind of concerts they went to. They're also the type of people who want to be the first to discover music. They want to be the people in their friend groups who can kind of come to their friends and tell them about a new band that they've heard, or say, hey, do you want to come to the show with me? This band that's playing is really good. And those are the type of people who really like introducing their friends to new music. And so that's the role we try to play as well as Pitchfork, introducing those types of people to new music. They're also critics too. If you ever look at our Twitter feed and the responses to some of our reviews, you'll see we get plenty of critics ourselves when we criticize music. But it's good because they're engaged and they're passionate about the music that they listen to. So we think of them as also very critical people, and because the internet is a wonderful place for voicing your opinion through platforms like Tumblr, those people who are really engaged with Pitchfork oftentimes write about music on their own, and we also read a lot of sort of hot takes on things that we do, and not only reviews of music, but reviews of our reviews, which is always kind of funny. Also, our audience, they're humans. People in our world, in the digital sphere, tend to sort of get myopic about traffic and click rates and those types of things. And while there is, an element to that where you do have to pay attention to it, that's not how we think about the people that read our website, and that's not what we think about when we're putting our stories together. We don't think about how many clicks it's going to get. We think about the people that are reading it and what it's going to mean to them, and how they'll engage with it. If it's going to be something that they will react positively to, or if it is something that maybe is a little bit more of a negative topic, how will that advance a conversation around the culture that we're telling stories about? And they also exist beyond the digital world. Pitchfork is mostly known for our website and our digital presence. But the main thing that I want to talk about today is that our audience is everywhere. The people that engage with Pitchfork on multiple levels, and as a publisher and a media company, we aren't just solely focused on our website, even though that happens to be our bread and butter. We really want to be omnipresent within that world. We don't want to be invasive. We don't want to be a company that's trying to interject ourselves where it's not appropriate, or where it might detract from productive sort of advancement of culture. But at the same time, we do want to sort of be a part of the conversation when we can be. So we are a digital-first company, but make no mistake, we're not digital only. And it's an important thing for us to make that distinction internally. With that said, the first thing I'll talk about is our digital presence and our product. Again, we started 20 years ago. This was the website from 2000, so 4 years after the original one. I personally don't have any images, and it's not possible to find them on the Wayback Machine this early back, but this was one of the first iterations of the site. And as you'll see, we kind of redesigned it quite a bit. This is 2002. And this one was also from 2002. A 2003 design. And one thing I think that's interesting about this is the banner ads. We're at this point in time, and still to this day, but in 2003, we were primarily focused on independent music, period. You wouldn't see a ton of major label artists on Pitchfork unless it was news that sort of had to do with the independent music world. But at the same time, there are bands like Black Keys that nobody had heard of yet, and they're going out of their way to make banner ads for our website. And this was kind of an interesting sort of development around this time, was that bands like the Black Keys, when they were really independent and not very well known, weren't used to making advertisements for the web. They were making ads for music magazines maybe, and doing promotion through grassroots ways, but we were sort of the first website where these types of artists and labels were actually advertising on the internet. This is another design from 2004. This design happened in 2005, stuck around for a few years, and then I think this one made its debut in 2007. and this is our current iteration of the site. Obviously now we're a little bit more worried about multi-platforms than we were, and everything's showing up on different size devices and having that responsiveness. We get about 7 million unique people to our site every month. This month we've had our highest month. We're at about 8.5 so far for January. 77% of our readers read the site daily. I've seen this go as high as almost 90%. To us, this is sort of our most proud analytic because it means that we have a really, really loyal audience. This is very high, even 77% for a typical website. Homepages aren't necessarily a thing of 2016, but I do know for a long time Pitchfork was a very popular sort of homepage to have when you loaded your browser. And that mindset, I think, kind of still continues to this day, where we have people that definitely come to the site every morning, and that's where we see our biggest spike of traffic is sort of, it's maybe one of the first websites people have bookmarked and we'll go to see what our reviews are and to see what the newest sort of albums are coming out and what our score is and what our writers have to say about it. So I think that loyalty is something that we try to be aware of, and it is something we're proud of. We had a 25% organic growth in 2015 with our traffic. And social media obviously has become a huge part of our voice as well on the web. So in 2015, or to this day, we have 5 million followers on social media. And in 2015, our traffic increased 50% from the year prior through social media. So something we're seeing with that is, back to my previous comment about the homepage, our homepage traffic through all that growth, and Pitchfork has continued to grow year after year, our homepage traffic is down about 50%. People don't go to our homepage like they used to, and it's because people are entering in through social media. It's because people follow us on Twitter or Facebook, and they're letting those platforms bring our stories and our reviews and our news to them, and they'll click through based on things that are interesting to them. So that's been an interesting development for us. It's sort of, it's not slowing us down, but it's a different way for us to think about things. And as we are entering into a new phase of redesign, which everyone will see in about a month, if we're lucky, is sort of, how do you imagine a homepage in 2016? Is it what it used? It used to be a directory. It used to be a place where you would go and see 50 pieces of content at the least, and it would all be in like little modular pieces, and that still exists to this day, and that's really great for a lot of places, and our redesign will have some of that. But at the same time, does it exist as a way for everybody to see, that comes to your site, to see every single piece of content that you've had in the last few days? And is it a directory like it used to be, or has technology on the web advanced to the point where we can have navigation systems that let people navigate through the site with a better user experience, and the homepage maybe should exist more like a magazine. Maybe it should be more curated and a place where you can sort of switch things up throughout the day and test how your audience is developing over time, and sort of maybe just bringing a few things that you think are important to the forefront as a way to sort of show your audience that maybe slowing down sometimes is another really great way to consume media. In terms of the type of content that we put out there, we have about 35 to 50 news stories a day. These are some features that we do. We'll do like 1 or 2 written features, long-form features a day, whether it's writing about a new, exciting, rising artist, or writing about an artist that's been around for a long time that's doing some new things, or that we want to check in with. It could be a story on digital media or the music industry in general, from a whole. So there are all kinds of features we do, including sort of more engaging features. So we have this one running right now, which is called Living Rooms, where we're talking about DIY scenes in different cities around the world. And this was in partnership with Converse, who's been a great partner on things, and it just makes stories like this possible for us. They don't have any interest in our actual content. They don't have any voice within our content. That's not something we do on Pitchfork. But at the same time, being able to sort of go beyond our normal resources and report on things around the world is a great opportunity that we'll take. So those types of partnerships are valuable to us as long as we maintain that church and state relationship between business and editorial. But for this program, it's just its own like sort of little hub where you can sort of navigate through these different cities and see what their DIY scenes are like. And one of the sort of added elements in this feature is that we have it translated side by side in the native languages of each one of these places. Another feature that we've done recently with a partnership with Samsung was following Courtney Barnett on tour. Our social media team and a few of our photographers went with her on a leg of tour, and we made an interactive map where you could see where she was on her tour. And as she would go, we would post in real time Instagram photos of them, her and her band at the gas station picking up snacks, or getting ready and sound checking before a show. And so you could follow this tour through our sort of interactive map, and just if you're a fan of hers, watch that in real time. And then our video team also sort of paired that with video content. We're also known for making lists. So one of our bigger features throughout the year is our August feature that we do, which last year was the 100 best albums of the decade so far, sort of a half-decade check-in. We also did one this year called the 200 best songs of the 1980s, just rounding up our 200 favorite songs of the 80s through Pitchfork's lens. And then every year we do, at the very end of the year, our year in music. So we'll have multiple features on the year in music, of course, our 50 favorite albums of the year, our 100 favorite tracks of the year, videos, news stories. This year we did memes for the first time. And so that's always a really fun way for us to take stock on things, and even internally for us to sort of argue with each other and talk about what our favorite things were. And every year as it ends, we're just like, wow, this is a really great year for music. Like every year we say that. And it's kind of funny to me because just that never ends, thankfully. Another feature that we did was called the People's List. This is one of the first ways in which we truly were engaging with our audience outside of social media. We ran this in 2011. This was also in partnership with Converse, who made it possible for us to sort of take our development team and bring them a step further and set up a sort of online poll that people took for about a month, and we really let people take their time and make their own lists of their favorite albums of the 90s, and came back and showed just all kinds of analytics about where people were coming from, different demographics and what kind of music that they like, and we really tried to explore a deep dive into what people liked from our audience in the 90s, and it was really interesting to see how those things lined up with how we report and rate things, and who's interested in what we're doing. And that was in 2011, and it kind of kick-started a new type of feature that we started doing at Pitchfork that we call our cover stories, which is when we escape our CMS, and instead of publishing our features through our automated system, we develop these stories from the ground up. And they're art-directed like print magazines, really. I've been asked about these from time to time and what our inspiration was for making them. And I think people expect the answer to oftentimes be rooted in digital and trying to innovate. And while that exists, I really think it came from a place of us loving in growing up with music magazines and running to the record store and buying like our favorite music magazine and just pouring through it and like seeing huge photos and not seeing it encumbered and being inundated by additional content modules and small advertisements and lots of distractions that sort of take away from really wonderful stories and beauty that you're trying to sort of find. I mean, this album can be made. This argument can be made for album artwork as well. Music is a very visual thing, actually. So we've been really enjoying doing these on the web. They are primarily done for desktop situations at this time. You have the ability to view them in this way, but also we publish them on the web in our normal feature format if you happen to be on a slow internet connection or something of that nature. And that they'll also display just in our regular mobile format if you're on your phone. So that this type of execution, we try to be aware enough to know that if we are talking about an art direction that comes from the print side, let's not try to like reinvent that for mobile necessarily. Let's just make a really good reading experience for mobile so it's easy to read because you only have so much space to work with. But on desktop, it's a different story. And those cover stories do kind of translate back to our video. Our video content, we consider a feature as well as our written features. We have a really talented in-house team of people, editors, producers, animators, directors, that make a lot of really great original content. We do music videos for artists. We've done animated tell-alls. We've done documentaries, long-form documentaries on Modest Mouse and Belle and Sebastian, and We've had, great interviews with tickets on sale in a week or two, actually, and we'll just sell early bird passes for a discounted rate. And that is kind of our way of thinking about fans that we know just love going to Pitchfork every year. They just love the experience. They go with their friends every year. It's a tradition, and they get a nice discounted price before we announce the bands, just because we know they're the people who are really into it, and so we like to try to give them a break on it. Our other marquee festival is in Paris. This was our trailer for our past year in November of 2015. The Paris Festival still reflects our editorial voice, our curatorial voice, like the Chicago one does. There's not a huge difference in how we book it in the United States, so the bands do primarily stay pretty similar, but I would say there's a 20% sort of overlap of more European-centric bands that are at the Paris Festival. Honestly, for us, it's a time to discover music that isn't necessarily as easily brought to us or discoverable. So we have a production team in Paris called Super, who definitely is a really big sort of presence in Paris. They own a couple venues and book shows around the year there. But they've been helpful for us in sort of understanding not only that market, but that music scene and learning more about it. And it's been really inspiring for us in that sense. We'll be entering our 6th year this October. And this one's a little bit smaller. We do about 25 artists on 2 stages and get just over 20,000 attendees each day. And in that sense, it's a different vibe than the Chicago Festival. It's mostly indoors. It's actually in Europe's oldest meat packing and slaughterhouse facility, which was turned into an event space in the 80s. And it's just a really long hall where we have a stage on each side. And because it's indoors, because it's in Europe, I feel like it's a little bit more low-key and chill, and it's in the fall. So I kind of like that about it. It's almost romantic to me in certain ways. And although at the same time, we go till 6 in the morning, which I'm way too old for. So I don't normally make it till the very end, but that's another thing that we're not able to have in the States. You know, we have to shut it down at 10 o'clock every night for curfew. So I guess that is one huge difference, is just dance music at 5 in the morning it's really fun, but it's a lot. So this has been a really great experience for us as Pitchfork, not only to grow, but sort of develop our voice and develop our sort of viewpoints on international expansion and presence. For the last 8 years, we've also had a stage at Primavera Sound, which is a wonderful festival, and they do 2 different versions on 2 different weekends in Barcelona and in Porto. And so we do a stage there every year, which is really fun. In terms of our geographic breakdown, we have just about 60%, these days a little bit under 60% in the United States. And then from there, we have about 40% outside of the United States, with the UK coming in between 8 and 10% on any given time. Canada being right behind the UK with about 7 to 8% of our traffic. And then from there, it goes down pretty significantly. France, one of the reasons we chose France, that is we get the most traffic coming out of France for non-native English-speaking countries. In terms of how we think about expanding internationally, it's really about us sort of doing what we do and trying to not only know what's happening around the world, and I think selfishly we want to know what's happening around the world a lot more, but we also want to sort of show that voice and bring that out to the world and show people what we're doing. We also do lots of different smaller events. We're always at South by Southwest every year, CMJ, North by Northeast in Toronto, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, MoMA PS1 in New York, basically all the acronyms, we're there. Our voice is also sort of really, we try to make it known through radio and podcasts and audio. Back about a year ago, we debuted Pitchfork Radio in Los Angeles, where we broadcasted for a month. It was almost in the style of an old college radio station, where we had our writers and editors talking about the music they love and playing the music they love and spinning it. And we'd also have artists and different musicians playing live shows and DJing themselves. Just a really fun time. And when we do radio, we're lucky enough to have a pretty big audience for that. It's pretty huge, actually, globally, 50 million listeners, about almost 900,000 uniques, listeners from over 215 countries. And if you're interested, check out Pitchfork this week. We'll be broadcasting from Fashion Week in New York on February 1st. And again, it's just a really, really fun sort of old school, and I say old school only in the sense of like old school college radio sort of experience. We also do podcasts. So these are a few of our titles for our podcasts. And we also started doing a show on Beats, or on Apple, it's called Apple Now Radio, or Beats One, where we do our top 10 favorite songs of the week. And so we have a show on Beats One now, which is a really nice way to do that. I'm running a little behind. I really wanted to talk about the Pitchfork Review quite a bit, which is our quarterly print publication. This is something that we started 2 years ago. Our 8th issue just came out. It's printed in Printers Row in Chicago, which I'm proud to say because Printers Row, as a lot of you probably know, was the North American epicenter for printing 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 100 years ago. And now there's only one printer left on Printers Row that's been there for over 60 years. And so we print with Palmer Printing. It's sheet-fed, perfect bound. We have cover folds on each side with a soft touch finish. The type of content that we publish in the Pitchfork Review is really necessary when we talk about why we sort of did it. We wanted to expand our voice to our loyal audience, which I already talked about, but we were having a really hard time making sense of why a digital publication would move into print. And for us, it's because of how people discover music through Pitchfork. People discover music through Pitchfork because we're a website that's always sort of like trying to break new tracks and new news and new artists and new sounds. And so people are coming there, and that's where they're learning about music. And our original thought of, okay, if we do that in print, how are we going to print something and talk about a new album that's out and review it and try and introduce people to it when they've already read about it on Pitchfork 3 weeks before that? So it was a really difficult proposition for us until we realized that our day-to-day on pitchfork.com wasn't concentrating enough on older music, on sort of more nuanced elements of the music industry, of really emotional things that, again, going back to my comments on our love for print and growing up with music magazines, there's a certain level of engagement there that you just don't have on the web. There's not the personal connection that you can have to music the same way you used to have sitting down with a vinyl record and putting it on and actually listening to the entire album all the way through instead of switching between different artists' tracks and playing with the cover artwork and sort of getting an entire feeling around this ecosystem that the artist started beyond just songs that they made. So for us, why print and why now? It's a new entry point for us. It's a way to sort of invite people that don't necessarily look at Pitchfork every day on the web, but who are interested in maybe a slightly different editorial focus, and someone who would love to read about those types of things. We're inviting them to sort of engage with Pitchfork in a new way, but the way we see it is they're still the same type of audience. They are those music lovers that I talked about. They are the people who identify with the types of artists and genres that they're interested in. So I don't think we went into print because it's some kind of fetish that I think a lot of people like to talk about, like, oh yeah, the print smells so good. I love like smelling it, like right out of the box, and all that kind of stuff. Even though that's a huge part of it, and I do that. That we didn't do it for that nostalgic piece. We did it because as long as we can justify it with our internal resources and we don't lose money on it, we want to sort of give people the message that we are music lovers and we understand the core value that it has in people's lives. And for us, print magazines are an essential part of that. And so we've also created them in a way that makes them not feel disposable. It's something we want people to hold on to. So if we are writing about older music that we think can sit on your shelf forever, we're also writing about new music that we think is going to be around forever and people are going to be talking about forever. We include huge photo spreads using gloss stock in the middle of our other sort of types of content. So it's things we ask people to hold on to. So we don't think about it necessarily like a magazine, and it doesn't qualify as a book, even though it has an ISBN. So we think about it just sort of as a publication that lives somewhere in between the two of those things. But all of that brings me just to say that our choice in medium really does tell different stories, maybe for the same audience. Beyond the actual stories being told, the way you're reading those stories, where they're coming from, whatever platform they're on, whether it's in real-life concert experience or in a print publication, they send different messages to the same audience. People talk about content a lot. It's become an acceptable choice of words for the type of work that we all do. But for us, content lives in the world of analytics and sort of growing your business, which again is something you have to pay attention to. But where we start isn't with making content, it's with telling stories. And that's essential to getting the trust that we need from our audience. And that's it. That's what I got. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi. We have time for a couple of questions, if anyone has some questions. Okay.
Hi. I'm just curious how many copies of the print review you print.
Sure, yeah.
On Printer's Row.
Exactly. Right now, 10,000 copies. It should be noted with our acquisition with Condé Nast, that was one of the things I was most excited about. They have that infrastructure for distribution and printing and everything else that hopefully we can keep our focus editorially, but it could change how that works.
How many employees do you have?
Oh, good question. I should have mentioned that. We have two offices, one in Chicago and one in New York. Operations are basically based in Chicago, so design, development, advertising, myself and the president are there. And that's about 20. And then we have about 25 in our New York office, and that's primarily editorial and video.
I'm interested in how you actually generate your stories. Are these all staff-generated stories, or are you actually using a host of freelance writers throughout the country in various locations?
Sure. Yeah, we have about 5 staff writers and about 10 editors on staff. And so a lot of our content, especially our news, is generated in-house. A lot of our features are as well. But we do have a network of over 100 freelancers that we reach out to. So it's a little bit of both.
Hi. Do you have any advice on the trust building process when you're starting out, when your resources are a lot more stretched? I can imagine it's like a lot more difficult at the beginning.
That's a good question. It is a luxury that we have that I try not to take for granted, and it's a privilege. But for us, I think it's honestly about going back to sort of not only like looking at your intended audience and then trying to understand them on a very personal and human level. It's already been discussed today, but just sort of having that, not trying to go for the broadest audience and not trying to make everybody happy and not compromising your ethics, but just basically working really hard to have a very focused concentration, not only on your editorial or your product, but on the audience itself. And for us, in my experience, I guess it does just take time. It's difficult to just kick it on and turn the lights on and that trust exists. I think there are ways that you could do that with your business and in finding new business plans and editorial platforms to create something successful. But I think it's pretty difficult to build trust immediately. It's something that I think takes some time and proving yourself in those ways.
For the question, I'm going to invite you to find Micheal in the break, just because we're running out of time. But maybe if you can find the lady over there for the question. If you raise your hand.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So there's one more question.
I'll be hanging around all day. I'm sorry I ran really late.
So thank you so much, Micheal. Thank you.